I'm Donna Moore, 32, an accountant in Omaha, Nebraska. For years, I've poured my savings into keeping my family afloat. Hospital bills for Dad's heart surgery, my sister's college tuition, a new roof after a brutal Nebraska storm. I even turned down a job in Chicago, a real chance to climb just to stay close for them. At our family dinner table, the one I paid to refinish, Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided," he said, voice firm. "The house, the savings. Everything goes to your sister. She deserves it for her business dreams." My stomach twisted. Mom nodded, her eyes dodging mine. "She's got big plans," she said, as if my sacrifices were nothing. I gripped my glass, knuckles white. "Your sister deserves it," hitting like a punch. All those late nights balancing their books, weekends spent fixing their messes, erased. They didn't see me. They thought I'd keep playing the dutiful daughter, pouring my paychecks into their lives. I wanted to scream, but my silence burned louder. My heart raced as I stared at that table, the weight of their betrayal sinking in. They'd taken everything I gave and handed it to her. Something snapped in me that night. If you've ever been pushed aside by family, smash that like button and share this story. You won't believe what I did next. As the plate sat untouched, my mind drifted to everything I'd given up. 5 years ago, Dad's heart surgery landed us with a bill for $15,000. Mom called me past midnight, her voice breaking, saying they had no way to pay. I sent the money by morning, draining every cent I'd saved. No weekend trips, no new shoes, just a quiet glance from Dad when he left the hospital. He never spoke of it again. I told myself it kept him breathing, and that was enough. Leslie's college tuition hit next. She swore a business degree would launch her into some grand entrepreneurial life, so I covered $10,000 a year for 3 years. My own rent and car payments barely fit my budget, but I made it work, believing she'd soar. She stumbled through classes, partied more than studied, and barely graduated. Her string of failed ventures, boutiques, food trucks, ate up her focus, but I stayed silent, signing checks to keep her dreams alive. 2 summers ago, a storm tore through Omaha, shredding our family home's roof. Mom pleaded over the phone, saying they'd lose the house without help. I paid $8,000 for repairs, taking extra hours at my accounting job to scrape it together. I still see that roof when I pass by, a marker of what I gave. The deepest cut was Chicago. A firm offered me a senior accounting position, $85,000 a year, a real chance to build something for myself. I said no. Leaving felt like betraying them, so I stayed anchored to Omaha. Each sacrifice stacked like stones on my chest. Late nights at my desk, numbers swimming, I wondered when I'd breathe for me. Dad's recovery, Leslie's degree, that sturdy roof. I made those happen. Yet they never noticed. Leslie swept in, spinning tales of her next big idea while I footed the bill. Mom and Dad cheered her vision, never asking how I stretched my paycheck. I didn't want applause, just a moment of recognition. Instead, I got their silence. The math told a harsh truth. All the money I gave them, hospital bills, tuition, repairs, while Leslie burned their money on designer clothes and weekend getaways. I'd seen the receipts when Mom handed me their tangled credit card statements to sort. I never said a word, just kept paying. My apartment stayed bare, my savings shrank, but I thought family meant giving, until it stung. I'd let go of trips, my career, my own peace, all for them. They leaned on me, expecting I'd always carry the weight. Leslie never offered a cent. She'd arrive with new earrings, boasting about investor meetings while I covered their bills. Mom and Dad called her their dreamer, their star, but never asked how I managed. I thought loyalty meant putting them first, even when it hollowed me out. Those years of giving left me empty, my future fading with every dollar I sent. I wasn't fully angry then, but the burden of their indifference grew heavier. I'd built their world brick by brick, only to see they'd never valued it. I couldn't keep giving everything for nothing. That night, their faces around the table came into sharp focus. I sat in our Omaha dining room, the weight of my sacrifices still heavy from my thoughts. Dad straightened, his eyes steady. "We've made up our minds," he said, voice cutting through the clink of silverware. "The house and our savings, they're going to Leslie. She deserves it for her dreams." My breath caught, a sharp pang slicing through me. Mom nodded, her hands clasped tightly. Leslie's got a mission, she said, her tone final, like a door slamming shut. She needs this to build her future. Leslie leaned back, a smug glint in her eyes, as if she'd always known she'd come out on top. My heart pounded, a rush of heat rising to my face. The house I'd helped keep standing, the savings I'd propped up, they were handing it all to her. I'd poured years into this family, and they acted like I was a shadow. My fingers tightened around my napkin, crumpling it. I wanted to yell, to ask why my efforts were invisible. But I bit my tongue, my silence a heavy anchor in the room. Dad folded his arms, satisfied. Leslie's got big ideas, he said, glancing at her with pride. She'll make something of herself. Make something. I'd held them together, but they didn't see it. Leslie spoke up, her voice bright and sharp. I've got plans in motion, she said, flipping her hair. This is my shot. She didn't even glance my way, as if my presence didn't matter. Mom reached out, touching Leslie's arm. We're behind you, she said, warmly, her eyes never meeting mine. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest. I thought of all I'd given, time, energy, my own plans swallowed by their needs. They didn't know the nights I'd spent worrying over their finances, the choices I'd made to keep them secure. They didn't care. Leslie's dreams were just words, half-big schemes that never landed, but they crowned her the star. I was just the one who made it possible. My throat tightened, a storm churning inside me. I could have stood, slammed my hands on the table, let it all spill out. But I stayed still, my gaze locked on the table's edge. They kept talking, their voices buzzing about Leslie's future, her potential. Each word stung, carving deeper into my loyalty. I'd believe family meant standing together, but they'd left me carrying the load alone, then given the reward to her. Leslie laughed, tossing out some vague idea about a new venture, while Dad nodded like she'd cracked a code. Mom added, We trust you, Leslie. Not me. Never me. I felt like a stranger in my own home, unseen, erased. I shoved my chair back, the sound sharp against their chatter. I need a moment, I said, my voice low and tight. They barely noticed. Leslie kept spinning her plans, Mom kept smiling, Dad kept nodding. I stepped onto the porch, the Nebraska night biting at my skin. Their words rang in my head. She deserves it, deserves it. I'd given everything, and they'd given me nothing. Not a nod, not a word of thanks. Something shifted in me then, a quiet break I couldn't undo. I wasn't their anchor anymore. Another week passed, and I couldn't shake the betrayal. I met Carol at a coffee shop in downtown Omaha, her face tense as she slid into the booth. She'd been my friend since high school, always blunt, and today her eyes carried a warning. I heard about the dinner, she said, voice low. But there's something you need to know about Leslie. My stomach knotted, already bracing for trouble. Carol leaned closer, her words sharp. She's been burning through money. New clothes, fancy trips on credit cards they didn't know about. She's racked up debt, and it's tied to your parents' house. I froze, my coffee cup heavy in my hands. Leslie's spending wasn't news. She'd always loved flashy things. But tying it to the house I'd fought to keep standing felt like a slap. Carol pulled out her phone, showing me a screenshot of a bank notice she'd gotten from a mutual friend at the loan office. It confirmed Leslie had used the house as collateral for her debts without Mom or Dad knowing. My pulse raced, anger mixing with disbelief, all my years of keeping them afloat, and Leslie had gambled their home on her whims. I drove straight to Mom's house, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. She was in the kitchen, stirring tea, looking tired but calm. I didn't sit down. Did you know Leslie's been using the house for her debts? I asked, my voice steady but sharp. Mom's spoon stopped, her face paling. What are you talking about? She said, but her eyes flickered like she'd suspected something. I laid it out. Carol's morning, the bank notice, Leslie's secret spending. Mom's hands shook, but she shook her head. Leslie wouldn't do that. She's just ambitious. I stepped closer, my voice rising. Ambitious? She's risking everything you have. Why do you keep defending her? Mom looked away, her lips tight. She's trying to build something, she said, softer now. You're strong. You always manage. Leslie needs us. Her words hit deep, twisting the knife of their choice at that dinner. I'd been their anchor, but they still chose her, even now. My chest burned, but I pressed on. The bank could take the house, Mom. Did you even check? She faltered, her hands gripping the counter. We trusted her, she said, almost a whisper. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she saw the truth. Instead, I pulled out my phone, showing her the same bank notice Carol had shared. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw doubt creep in. How did you get this? She asked, voice trembling. Carol. Someone had to tell me since you wouldn't. Mom sank into a chair, silent, her face a mix of shock and shame. I stood there waiting, for her to say something, anything to make it right. But she just stared at the table, her hands folded. The woman who'd praised Leslie's dreams now looked lost, like the ground had shifted under her. I'd spent years protecting this family, only to learn Leslie had endangered it all. My anger wasn't just at her, it was at Mom, Dad, their blind faith in her. I turned to leave, my voice low. You chose her, but she's the one sinking you. I walked out, the door clicking shut behind me, my resolve hardening. I was done cleaning up their mess. A month later, Mom texted, "The bank payment is due." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keys, and typed back, "That's not my responsibility." The words felt like a blade, sharp and final, cutting through years of obligation. I'd silenced my phone to block their relentless calls. Mom's soft pleads, Dad's stern demands, Leslie's entitled accusations. Each unanswered ring was a brick in the wall I'd built around my peace. My Omaha apartment, now a fortress against their expectations. For weeks, I'd avoided their messages, letting voicemails pile up like debts I refused to pay. My life, once tethered to their needs, was finally mine to claim. That evening, a sharp knock echoed through my apartment. I opened the door to find Mom, Dad, and Leslie standing there, their faces a tense tableau of desperation and defiance. Mom clutched a folder of bank notices, her hands trembling as she stepped forward. "We're out of time," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. "The bank will take the house if you don't help." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, my expression unyielding. "Leslie dug this hole," I said, my tone cold but steady. "Let her climb out." Leslie's eyes flared, her jaw tight with anger. "You're betraying us," she spat, stepping closer, her voice dripping with venom. "We're your family, and you're just walking away." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound harsh in the quiet hallway. "Betraying you? I've carried this family for years. Every bill, every crisis, every sacrifice, and you handed it all to her." My words landed like a slap, and her face flushed, but she didn't back down. Dad moved forward, his presence heavy, his eyes searching mine for the daughter who'd always caved. "This isn't who we raised," he said, his voice low, laced with disappointment. "You're letting us fall apart." The accusation stung, a sharp twist in my chest, but I held my ground. "I've given enough," I said, locking eyes with Leslie. "Your mess, your problem." Her lips parted, but no words came, her defiance faltering under my gaze. Mom's voice broke the silence, soft and pleading. "Please, just this once," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We're your family." I scanned their faces. Mom's trembling hands, Dad's furrowed brow, Leslie's clenched fists. They weren't here for me. They were here for what I could give. My heart pounded, not with guilt, but with a clarity I'd never felt before. "Family doesn't mean I'm your bank," I said, my voice firm, unshaken. "I'm done." I stepped back, ready to close the door, but Leslie lunged forward, her voice rising. "You think you're better than us?" she demanded, her eyes wild with desperation. "You'll regret this when we lose everything." I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Leslie," I said, my words deliberate. "You'll regret gambling their home on your schemes." Her face crumpled, a flicker of fear replacing her bravado. Dad raised a hand as if to calm her, but his eyes stayed on me. heavy with judgment. "You're choosing yourself over us," he said, his tone final, like a verdict. I nodded, unapologetically. "Yes," I said. "For the first time, I am." Mom reached out, her fingers grazing my arm, but I pulled away. "Don't," I said, my voice softer, but no less resolute. "You made your choice when you picked her." The air grew thick, their silence louder than any argument. I thought of the years I'd spent balancing their books, stretching my paychecks, sacrificing my dreams to keep them afloat. Every late night, every missed opportunity, every quiet moment of resentment, it had led to this. They'd taken my loyalty for granted, assuming I'd always bend. But I was no longer their anchor. I glanced at the folder in Mom's hands, the bank notices spilling out, a testament to Leslie's recklessness. "Call the bank," I said, my eyes on Leslie. "Fix it or face it. I'm not your way out anymore." She flinched, her hands balling into fists. But she stayed silent, her usual confidence gone. I closed the door, the click echoing in the stillness. Their voices lingered outside, muffled but persistent, pleading and accusing in turn. I walked to my window, the Omaha skyline glowing against the dusk, a reminder of the life I was reclaiming. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail, probably Dad's stern voice or Leslie's entitled pleas. I didn't check. Instead, I sank into my couch, the weight of their expectations lifting. My pulse steadied, replaced by a quiet freedom. I'd spent years giving everything, only to be sidelined for Leslie's empty promises. Now I was choosing myself, and it felt like breathing for the first time in years. Their problems were no longer mine. The next week, whispers started spreading. I noticed it first at the grocery store in Omaha, where neighbors I'd known for years averted their eyes, their hushed voices trailing behind me. By Wednesday, my inbox was flooded with messages from old friends asking if the rumors were true. Leslie had taken to social media, painting me as the villain, a selfish daughter who'd abandoned her family in crisis. Her posts, sharp and venomous, accused me of turning my back on Mom and Dad, leaving them to lose their home. My throat tightened as I read her words, each one a twisted lie that burned. At work, the whispers grew louder. Colleagues I barely knew shot me sidelong glances, their conversations stopping when I walked by. A coworker, someone I trusted, pulled me aside. "Is it true you're letting your parents' house go to the bank?" she asked, her tone heavy with judgment. I shook my head, my voice steady, despite the heat rising in my chest. "No," I said, "that's not the story." But the truth didn't matter. Leslie's lies had spread like wildfire, and people believed what was easiest to swallow. Mom called that afternoon, her voice cold. "People are talking," she said. "They're saying you've walked away from us." I gripped my phone, my knuckles pale. "Leslie is the one spreading this," I said, my words sharp. "She's lying to save herself." Mom paused, then sighed. "You need to fix this," she said, as if I were the one who'd started the fire. I hung up, my hands shaking, the weight of her words settling like a stone. They weren't just letting Leslie's lies spread, they were adding fuel. Dad's email came next, formal and cutting. "Your actions are tearing us apart," he wrote. "People in town are calling us desperate because of you." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. Desperate. I'd spent years keeping them afloat, but now I was the one dragging them down. Their accusations stung, not because they were true, but because they came from the people I'd given everything for. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through Leslie's latest post, a public rant about my cold heart, complete with comments from strangers calling me ungrateful, heartless. I walked to a park near my apartment, needing air to clear the haze of their words. The Omaha skyline loomed in the distance, steady and indifferent. I had always thought family was a bond that held through anything, but now it felt like a trap. Leslie's lies weren't just words. They were a campaign to bury me, to make her the victim and me the traitor. And Mom and Dad, instead of stopping her, were piling on, their silence in her defense louder than any argument we'd ever had. By Friday, the rumors had reached my clients. One, a local business owner I'd worked with for years, sent a curt email. "Heard about your family. Not sure we can keep working with someone who'd do that." My stomach sank, a cold dread settling in. Leslie's posts weren't just personal, they were hitting my life, my work, my name. I sat at my desk, staring at the email, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to fight back, to post my side, to scream the truth, but I didn't. I closed my laptop, my resolve hardening. They could tear me down, but I wouldn't let them break me. A few days later, they showed up at my office. The glass doors of the Omaha accounting firm swung open, and Mom, Dad, and Leslie marched in, their faces set like stone. My colleagues glanced up, the air thick with tension. I stood behind my desk, papers scattered, my heart pounding, but my expression calm. Mom spoke first, her voice low but sharp. "We're here to talk sense into you," she said, clutching a folder. "You can't keep ignoring us." I leaned back, arms crossed. "I'm not ignoring you," I said, my tone even. "I'm done fixing your problems." Leslie stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "You're acting like you're above us," she snapped. "People are talking, and it's because of you." I raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Because of me, Leslie? You're the one who lied. You dragged them into this mess." Her face flushed, but she didn't back down, pointing a finger. "You're tearing this family apart." Dad's voice cut through, heavy with authority. "Enough," he said, stepping between us. "We're losing everything, and you're sitting here unmoved." His words hit hard, but I held my ground. "I'm unmoved because I've given enough," I said, my voice steady. "Leslie made her choices. She needs to own them." Dad's jaw tightened, his eyes searching mine as if looking for the daughter who'd always stepped in. He wouldn't find her today. Mom opened the folder, spreading bank notices across my desk. "Look at this," she said, her voice trembling. "We're out of time. You have the means to help." I didn't touch the papers. "Leslie used the house as collateral," I said, my gaze locked on her. "She needs to fix it, not me." Leslie's eyes darted away, her defiance cracking. "I was trying to build something. You wouldn't understand." I laughed, sharp and cold. "Build something? You built a disaster." The room fell silent, my colleague's stares burning into us. Mom's shoulders slumped, her voice soft now. "We're your family. Does that mean nothing?" My chest tightened, her words echoing years of duty I'd carried. But I was done. "Family doesn't mean I'm your bank," I said. "Leslie, call the bank. Work it out. I'm not your way out anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked to Mom and Dad, waiting for them to step in, but they didn't. Dad's face hardened. "You're choosing yourself over us," he said, his voice low. "I never thought you'd be this selfish." The word stung, but it didn't break me. "Selfish?" I said, stepping closer. "I gave you everything for years. Now it's Leslie's turn to step up." I turned to her, my voice firm. "You made this mess. Clean it up." She flinched, her hands clenched, but she stayed silent. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, not defiance. Mom reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "We're done here," I said, gesturing to the door. "I have work to do." They stood there, frozen, as if expecting me to change my mind. I didn't. Dad shook his head, turning away first. Mom followed, her steps slow, the folder still on my desk. Leslie lingered, her gaze locked on me, a mix of anger and desperation. She walked out, the door closing behind them, leaving only silence. Weeks later, the truth came crashing down. A neighbor sent me a news article from Omaha's local paper. The headline, "Stark Local Family Loses Home to Foreclosure." Mom and Dad's house, the one I'd poured my heart into saving for years, was gone. The article didn't name Leslie, but it didn't have to. Word spread fast. Her reckless spending, her lies about building a future, had been exposed when the bank seized the property. Neighbors whispered about her lavish trips and designer bags purchased while the family's foundation crumbled. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the screen, a quiet relief washing over me. The truth was out, and it wasn't my burden anymore. Leslie's social media went silent, her posts about my cold heart replaced by a void. Friends who'd once believed her lies began messaging me, their tones apologetic. "We didn't know," one wrote, recounting how Leslie had spun tales of my betrayal to anyone who'd listen. A local shop owner who'd questioned me weeks ago called to say he'd heard the real story. Leslie's debts, her refusal to act, her dragging mom and dad down with her. I nodded, my voice calm. I said, "It's over," and meant it. Their judgment no longer held weight. Mom called one evening, her voice thin and tired. "We're staying with friends," she said, the words heavy with defeat. "We lost everything." I waited, expecting her to ask for help, but she didn't. Instead, she added, "Leslie's gone. She left town." My chest tightened, not with guilt, but with clarity. Leslie had run, leaving Mom and Dad to face the wreckage alone. "I'm sorry it came to this," I said, my tone steady, "but it wasn't my fault." Mom didn't argue, her silence a reluctant admission. Dad never called, his absence louder than any words. I walked through my apartment, the Omaha skyline glowing beyond my window. For the first time in years, I felt light, unburdened by their expectations. I started saying no more often, not just to them, but to anyone who demanded too much. My days became my own, filled with quiet evenings, new hobbies, and a career I built without their shadow. I wasn't running from family, I was choosing myself. The whispers in town faded, replaced by respect from those who saw me stand firm. I'd lost their love, perhaps, but I'd gained my freedom. This journey taught me a hard lesson. Family doesn't mean owing someone your life. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Leslie's lies and my parents' demands showed me that love shouldn't come with a price tag. I hope my story resonates with you. If it does, I'm grateful you've stayed with me until the end. Please share your thoughts below. What would you have done in my place? And if you found value in this story, consider subscribing to this channel for more. Your support means the world.